Hey class, welcome to week 7 of History of Psych. I know it's been a long, crazy week leading up to this, so I hope to give you just a couple of announcements and important topics as we look to week 7 of information. All right, a couple announcements. As you guys hopefully have noticed at this point, that we have several changes in due dates. For both Module 6 and Module 7, all of your assignments, so 2 social bookmarks, as well as 2 quizzes, will be due on February 28th. The reason I did this instead of moving kind of everything back a week is if I had moved back all the modules a week, then you guys would be doing work over spring break. And I just didn't think that you guys would want to do that. So please stay tuned, try to push through this week. I know we can do it. Also, because everything is going to be due February 28th, it's really going to give me 100 papers that I would need to grade on that date. So please be patient with me as I make it through your guys' social bookmarks and grades. Give me 2 to 3 days to get through them all. Please let me know if you guys are having kind of any extenuating circumstances, like no power, no heat. I'm willing to work with you, so please just let me know. Final thing I want to kind of throw out there is you guys should be working on your psychological disorder paper. I know that I probably seem really intense for something that's due April 11th, but I want you guys to be fully prepared to be working on this. It's worth 25% of your overall grade in this course, and I want you guys to do well on it. If you turn this paper into me via email by March 28th, I'll read it, provide you feedback, and turn it back to you by April 4th at the latest to make revisions. So you have a full week to make revisions and give it back. Please take advantage of this opportunity. I think it's going to do you a world of good. Also, I have a rubric that is in the rubrics module. Please take a look at this. It's going to help you out tremendously. All right, and as always, if you guys have any questions, any issues at all, please send me an email or send me a message on Canvas. I am happy to help. All right, as we look forward to week 7 or chapter 6 in your textbook, I really think that you guys will enjoy this topic. We're still in that late 19th or early 20th century, but the focus of this chapter is really on clinical research and psychology. So what that means are mental disorders, how they were treated, and really kind of the birth of mental asylums as well as mental illness treatment. During this time, there was a rise in mental illnesses. This chapter does a really great job of explaining why that is. They kind of narrow it down to several things, and they give it kind of a classy / scandalous title called Sex, Drugs, and Alienation. What that really means is there was an increase in STDs, including syphilis, that caused mental issues. Drugs and substance abuse were rampant in sweeping cities at this time. The most commonly abused drugs during the time were alcohol, cocaine, opium, and morphine. And the final thing that historians believe caused this increase in mental illness was the term alienation. So alienation really just kind of refers to as the stress or daily hassles. People consider this kind of the pressures of the big city, continuous stress, and a lack of family support. So really in this area, not a whole lot has changed as we look forward to 2021. I think there's still, even as we look at COVID times, alienation and its effect on mental illness is still huge. During this time, we start to see terminology being developed and classification of mental illnesses. You start hearing the terms like hysteria, neurosis, madness. People start putting terms to eating disorders such as anorexia, bulimia. And there's also terminology that refers to patients, treatment facilities, and therapists. So it really becomes kind of a whole new world of words, of language, of terminology that people start developing. Another huge focus of this chapter is going to be on brain trauma and what people have learned from brain trauma. The three huge names I want you guys to focus in on are going to be Gage, Broca, and Wernicke. Phineas Gage was just your everyday guy, worked at a railroad company, and in a freak accident had a railroad spike be driven through his skull. What it did is it detached his frontal lobe from the rest of his brain. He survived miraculously, but it showed scientists that trauma to different parts of the brain causes different sorts of things. So because his frontal lobe was detached, really the only thing that changed was his personality. He lived for several years after this accident, but ultimately died from his accident several years later because of seizures. In contrast to Gage, Broca, and Wernicke were scientists who focused on different areas of the brain. You might have heard of Broca's area or Wernicke's area. They're both parts of your brain that deal with your speech. So both of these men are very interesting, and how they kind of came to their conclusions are also interesting. When we push forward in this chapter as well, we'll start looking at early attempts at treatment as well as kind of the birth of asylums, as well as kind of what's called water resorts. So a huge part of treatment during this time, especially when treating an illness called nervous fatigue, is they would send people to what's called a water resort, or really kind of a spa for treatment. This chapter does a great job at focusing on what are the goals of asylums and how to treat mental disorders during this time. So in the 19th and 20th century, asylums had really 4 goals. Those goals are incapacitation, isolation, research, and treatment. So I'm going to kind of go into those 4 things. Incapacitation really means that asylums incapacitated violent individuals who were considered to be dangerous to themselves or others. This provided some relief to families and communities. However, kind of the negative part of this is asylums became a convenient depository for unwanted individuals who are no longer capable of exercising their rights. When we look at the second goal is isolation. Asylums did a great job of isolating individuals who were deemed embarrassing, difficult, or unacceptable, thus creating a societal impression that the problem of the mentally ill had been somewhat addressed. So it really kind of takes on this idea that what you can't see isn't happening. So what they would do in order to kind of create this like utopian world where we're kind of free of issues and drama and mental illness, is the people who were suffering from these disorders were completely removed from society and their family. The third goal of asylum is research. Asylums provided the opportunity to gather empirical information about mental illnesses and to conduct experiments on the effectiveness of mental treatment methods. As we kind of look forward to today, and hindsight is always 2020, the methods to date of collection were often unreliable during this time period, but it kind of created a great place to start. And finally, the last goal is treatment. Some asylums offered a range of treatment procedures, typically limited to work, exercise, or diet. There was no kind of manual that said treatment for mental disorders has to look this way or look this way. Doctors in these asylums could really experiment, for lack of better words, on anything that they believed could treat a disorder. There really wasn't a whole lot of protocol at this time, but if a physician was interested in, let's say, believing that if you gave a patient a bath every day, that they would be able to cure their mental illness. They kind of had free range for what's called water treatment on patients to see what would happen. So like I said, there was no really ethical guidelines at the time. So the main takeaways that I want you guys to focus in on during this chapter are going to be the changes in views of mental illness during this time period. People maintained a very discriminatory and negative attitude about individuals with mental illness. And as well, clinicians created a variety of theories to help explain what mental illness is. There was an increase in mental health cases. People in most industrial societies witnessed a rise in the number of mental patients during this time. This time period was also what's considered the birth of psychiatry, as well as the birth of clinical psychology. So clinical psychology, as well as kind of this field of psychiatry, really did not exist until this time period. So really think about the implications, the ramifications of that as we look forward and we continue out throughout history. As always, guys, if you have any questions at all, please let me know. I'm happy to help. And if you guys are still struggling with any sort of issues related to the storm, reach out to me and I'm happy to work with you. Have a good one.